Okay. What we are going to learn today, as you may know from the lecture name and also by the pre-class notes, is GitHub Actions, right? As the name itself says, what do you think from a GitHub Actions mean? It's some actions, right? Just like how we have various methods on JavaScript. If you take any like array.push, array.pop, we have some actions which GitHub does. Okay, these are some of the features of GitHub. And now, what happens is whenever any developer thinks of using GitHub Actions, right? I mean, I did speak to a few people in our team also. It looks very complex. Okay, I mean, even if you try to read documentation or even try to explore something on GitHub Actions, it looks very complex to get started. But that's not our goal. We will see how we can simplify it and do a very simplistic, exercise first, and then we will try to make it a bit more with more things, and we will discuss 3-4 examples and how 3-4 actions can be done. Okay. Now GitHub Actions, basically some of the actions which GitHub does, right? Now, for someone to do action, we have to mention something, right? Something as in what action to do and when to do. Okay, let's say we are in a class and we discuss that, okay, let's do some actions, right? Let's act. So there should be something when, like what action to do and when to do, right? I mean, so I can't just ask everyone to, like, let's say we all are having our camera on, and then I can't randomly, it will magically, the action won't happen. There will be something where I will have to, someone really turned on the camera. Okay. When, okay, it broke the flow. Okay. What action to do and when to do, right? That's all we need to know, kind of, to get started with the GitHub Actions in a very simplistic way. Okay. What action to do, what action should GitHub do, and when should that action should be done by GitHub. Okay. Now, why do we need GitHub Action, right? We understood what part, like it's something actions which GitHub does, and we can tell what action to do and when to do, right? Why do we need this GitHub Actions? Will we be using it every day in our development? So those questions we will discuss, right? So, okay, GitHub Actions, right? Let me call it as, okay, GitHub Actions. We know that it's some actions performed, right? We try to configure the actions or set up those actions in such a way so that we automate daily activities, right? Now, when it comes to GitHub's daily activities, it's mostly around our software development, right? Our development, our coding, so those things. So automate software development workflows, right? Now we will break down this and see what a workflow is, etc., right? Now, what do you think software development is? Is it coding? Is it programming? Or what is software development? Can everyone try answering? Is it coding? Is it programming? Is it committing, pushing to GitHub, or like what is it? Coding and logic, coding debugging. Okay, so typically, right, we do have something called as software development life cycle, right? If you haven't seen that diagram, I would suggest to like have a look at it. So software development life cycle. So if you go to an image, right, you can see that there are various things, right? Because coding is not software development, right? Coding is like we are telling the system, telling the computer to do something, right? But what to do, the whole process of software development consists of this cycle, right? Planning, defining, designing, building, testing, deployment. Because let's say your application has millions of users or even like hundreds of users, right? If it is deployed without testing, there may be bugs, and bugs can be very harmful bugs or even a very benign not harmful bugs. Not harmful bugs are something like the CSS is broken, those things, right? For example, harmful bugs are those bugs, which may be letting someone exploit your code. Maybe you had a paid feature which someone is trying to work around a way by exploiting a bug and maybe using it for free, right? So like for example, yeah, an issue with an authentication could also be a harmful bug. So to kind of prevent all these, there is a life cycle of deployment where all these things happen. Software doesn't happen just by coding. Also, like as you move from SD1 to SD2 to SD3, there will be not more and more of coding. There will be less and less of coding. Okay, it's kind of inverse. We may have the assumption, okay, in SD1, I will code less. In SD2, I will code more. In SD3, I will code even more. But it kind of inverse. Okay, yeah, in SD2 you may code more, but when it comes to SD3, you kind of code less. Your main work will be in doing this cycle itself, right? And letting the same coding task functions to be completed by SD1s as such. Okay. Now in this software development life cycle, right? If you can think of apart from this, like this is both technical and non-technical, like planning, defining, designing, involves UI UX, which database to use, all that stuff, right? But when it comes to purely technical point of view, you can think of few steps, right? First thing is you will code, right? You will code, uh, and then you will build, right? Making a build. Making a build is typically like, for example, let's say we had a React app, right? In HTML, CSS, JavaScript, what we do, if we want to use some library, like for example, we used WebSockets, right? We used that link in our script tag, right? So we added the CDN link of that WebSockets in a script tag of our JavaScript file as such. But in case of React, you install it, okay, and you want to make a build folder where everything is combined as such. Okay. Yeah, you can also use Webpack to create a build. A good example. So let's look at the Webpack diagram, right? So in that case, it's very clearly shown. Okay. So you have various things. Now, once you kind of bundle, you kind of get that and stuff. It makes sense when you're using some framework like React as such. Okay. That's basically coding or building. Okay. Let's call it as your production ready code. Okay. Let's call it as a build. Basically your code, which is now production ready. Like you are not using any sensitive information in your code. It's all in the env variable, those things. Okay. Now once you have your code ready, what's the next thing you will do in software development cycle, purely from technical point of view, keeping the designing all that aside? Okay. Yeah, testing, right? Like we discussed, you wouldn't want to have your code shipped and be available to all your customers or all your users without testing for various things. Okay. Now what's the other thing after testing? Okay. Yeah, deploy. Now anything after deployment? Any guesses? I mean, we had a lecture on that, if you remember. Let people use, the people will use it, that's fine. But like, are we just gonna leave it? Let's say LMS, right? LMS was built, tested, and deployed. Is it all chill? No, we do monitoring and logging. Remember, we discussed that logging and monitoring. You want to maybe trigger some notifications on something, right? Even for Masai, we recently have, I think, health.masaischool.com. It's a public dashboard, but you can check the systems which are working as such. Everything seems to be working, right? Basically, you would want something to monitor or maybe trigger something, right? If at a point, let's say we know that our server handles 1000 users, maybe when 950 users are there, maybe write some logic to send an email or trigger something and that stuff, right? So those things typically come. Now what GitHub Action does is, right, or why we use these GitHub Actions is that instead of doing it manually, right, instead of doing each time manually. Now, which may which may lead to skipping something, right? Or maybe forgetting something or doing something wrong. Having systems in place, in a very simple language, having systems in place. Okay. And now when, okay, I can give an example for this, right? Earlier, like long back, maybe 1 year back, what used to happen was, let's say some instructor doesn't want to take a class today for any reasons, right? Can just discuss with his manager, right? Inform manager in a channel, inform students, right? It was as simple as that. But now, since we have various tracks, various Zoom links used across different times, now we have a system in place where if I don't want to take a class, I have to first reach out to EC, then reach out to someone in the curriculum team, one particular person, point of contact in the curriculum team. Like there's a Slack bot which I need to fill, which kind of sends a response and then gets approved by various stakeholders. And then there is someone to check, okay, if the IS stand-up is being taken at that time, class time, the link which will be used in the IS stand-up, the Zoom link, is it not used somewhere, right? We basically having the whole system in place, basically a checklist, so that nothing gets hampered because of this change, right? So this having systems in place is what this is. So by using GitHub Actions, we can have these systems in place. Okay, so as soon as something is built, send it to testing. As soon as it's tested, like deploy it, right? As soon as it is deployed, monitor it. Okay, obviously we'll have various codes for that, various things, various scripts to run, but just that having the system in place, right? This system is also called as CI/CD, right? So continuous integration and continuous deployment, right? Now, what happens is once you have this system in place, right? Now, next time you came and fixed some bug in the code, it goes to the same cycle. You're continuously integrating something new and it's going to the same cycle. Okay, you coded something new now, it got built, it got tested, it got deployed, and it went to the monitoring thing. Okay, is that clear why we are using GitHub Actions, or like what's the need of GitHub Actions, everyone? Okay, now is it something used by an individual contributor, or do you think this is something for an organization? GitHub Actions, you think like it makes sense, or like it is useful for an individual contributor, like individual person, or like for an organization? Okay, yeah, so yeah, it helps for both, definitely, because even in an individual, he may mess up with the steps, right? But the major cases, or the majority places where this is kind of done is in an organization, because remember there are various people contributing. Okay, now we'll see one example in today's class as well. Let's say you all are aware of coding styles, right? Coding style. I think there was one class, right, where different things were discussed, like in a snake case, camel case, maybe in unit 1, if you guys remember, right? So in every organization, right, there will be a coding style. Maybe the first time they start writing code, because let's say you have one person writing function as like this, right? Function and function name, let's say deploy it, right? Deploy it. Okay. Now maybe that person leaves the company, or even he's there, someone else joins. You don't want them to write the function as maybe do it like this, right? Someone else join, they're writing function like maybe do it or deploy, right? You want to have a uniform coding style. And just give me one example, right? Now to have it, instead of telling every time someone joins, okay, this is the coding style, and making sure that they follow, obviously things which come out of habit are very difficult to change. Just saying someone to follow one convention won't make sense, because they will try to follow, but at some point, maybe in the urgency of submitting the code or something, they may do the mistakes, right? So what this can be done is, here while testing, even a coding style could be tested. Okay, that way anyone who is submitting the code, before it goes to the deployment, even while testing, even that thing is tested. If something fails here, right, You get triggers, you won't deploy until that thing is fixed. Is it making sense? How this system works, or how this process is the CI/CD thing called as? Okay, this whole cycle. Okay, so you can give more info about coding styles if possible. You can just explore that as well. I mean, I think you have already seen that, right? So there are various coding styles, and we also have libraries for that. Okay, we can use one library today so that we can try to enforce this exact example that we discussed right now. Okay, now let's move on to the coding part. Okay, and we will do it together. Okay, also, like we discussed, right? This is done at an organization level. You as an individual contributor can't go and set this pipeline as such, CI/CD pipeline as such. So it will be done basis like various decisions made and stuff. The reason why we are learning, though you won't be like setting this up at a company, is so that you are aware of this, right? When you go and you see that, okay, they say, okay, they discuss about GitHub Actions in the maybe Scrum, like in the Scrum or the meetings, you are aware okay, what that is and how that thing works. Okay, you just need to know how to use it and how to even set up. We will try that examples. Okay, so is that clear, everyone? Let's get started with the coding. Okay, cool. So again, GitHub Actions, remember, it is a facility given by GitHub for us, right? So do you think everything will be free? No, right? They do charge for various things. So they have, again, free tier, dose tier, and all that stuff. So we can't be using that on our Masai repo, right? So because for organization, I think they charge. So we will be doing on a separate repo, okay, on a personal repo. So everyone go to GitHub and just create a repo. So let me create a new repository and do it together, because this thing is kind of, again, the first time we are learning, right? And the very first time you learned GitHub, it kind of didn't make sense. That's very simple things like add, commit, push. The first time you learned, it was a bit different syntax, right? So even this will be a bit different. So let's do it together. Go and create a repository. So let me create a repository. Let me call it as GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions example. We try to. You can call it anything. Maybe just call it a demo or GitHub Actions example, whatever you want to. Right. Keep it public. That's fine. Don't need to add any README. Let me just create the repository. Okay. Once everyone is done creating the repository, just type one in chat box. Okay, very simple stuff, right? Yeah. Now, even in your VS Code, right? In your VS Code, one, don't use, like, if all these folders, if you are having in the Masai repo, right? If Masai repo is initialized there, don't use it there. We'll have to initialize this repo. So maybe make a folder or a file on a desktop, right? You can just open folder and maybe just get a new folder, open new folder on a desktop or somewhere. Okay, I don't have Masai repo initialized here. Let me just check. Okay, yeah, there's no repo initialized for my folders, so I can use it. But you make sure that you are opening a separate folder outside the folders where you have initialized Masai repo for submitting assignments every day. Okay, is that clear? Let me check on the parent repo as well, a parent folder as well. Yeah, I don't have a Git repository initialized, so it's perfect. Okay, is everyone in line? Have you all opened a folder or a file or a path where Masai repo is not initialized? Okay, perfect. So let's just initialize this repo, right? What I can call this as, I can maybe remove this. Okay, let me keep it as it is. Okay, ignore these three files. You will have a empty folder, right? Let us just initialize a Masai repo. Sorry, this repo, right? Git initialize. So an empty repo is initialized. It says the Git repository has too many active changes. Okay. Oh, oops. Okay. My bad. I initialized on a parent folder. That will give me some issues. Just give me a moment. Let me just remove it. ls -l to Okay, ls and remove minus rf dot git. I don't do this. I'm just removing my git. Git status. Yeah, perfect. Let me go to day 16. cd day 16. Okay. Yeah. Now let me do git init. Yeah, I have initialized an empty git repository, right? Now let's go and add this as a remote origin, right? So let me just add this as git remote origin, copy paste this. Okay, nothing new we are learning so far, just initializing the repo and adding that as an origin for the place we are going to code now. Okay, everyone here? Initialized and added the remote origin. I directly cloned it. Will it be fine? Cloning, I think I think cloning, once you have cloned, just add, yeah, I think it's fine. As long as you're able to adding, committing and pushing something to that repo, it's fine. That's perfectly fine. Okay. Yeah, now we have this thing, right? Let's just have a file called as maybe index. Okay, even before that, okay, before that, don't have any file, right? Now, let's pay attention here, right? We discussed that the whole GitHub Actions, though ignored by many developers because it looks very complex to get started, is the entire thing is based on these two things. Now, these two things can get as complex as required, but on a overview level, what action to do, when to do, right? Now, what action to do, we can, it's called as on, right? Basically a trigger, right? Now, when to do, there are different stages, right? Do we want it to be done when a code is pushed, right? If we want it to be done when the code is pulled, or do we want it to be done when the code is pushed to which branch? Because remember, I'm assuming everyone have used multiple branches, right? On GitHub, maybe in the collaboration project or somewhere. Yeah, perfect, right? So we can also configure, when to do it. The when can get as complex as you want, and even what action to do can get as complex as you want, right? But is it making sense? What and when are, everyone? For any action should be what and when, right? Like what action to do, that's basically on, right? On the trigger thing. Like if we have a trigger in the gun, like we have a trigger on in the WebSockets to emit something and listen on. Similarly, we have an on and we have different stages, right? Basically like on event, on click, on something. Okay. Now for creating any GitHub actions, right? What we need to do is pay attention. We need to have this particular folder, okay, in the exact way. So make a .github folder. Okay, make a .github folder. Okay, one that is done, go inside that folder. Folder of file, folder. .github is a folder. So mkdir should work, or you can right click and create using GUI as well. Create a folder. .github. Okay, not GitHub. .github. Okay. Now go inside that folder. Okay, inside that folder create one more folder. Okay, again not a file, again one more folder called as workflows. Okay, so we have a github folder. Inside that we have a workflows folder. Okay, now inside this folder, let's go inside this folder, workflows folder. Okay, we can create a file. We can call any name. Let's call it as maybe build itself, right? Or whatever, test or build, whatever you want. Let's call it as build. So let me create a file, touch build.yml. Make sure the extension is YML. Okay, .yml. Okay, once so far it is done, you have a .github folder. Inside that you have a workflows folder. Inside that you have a xyz.yml or like build.yml. Just type one in chat box. Okay, yeah, now to discuss this, right, this file name can be anything. Build is not a keyword. It can be build.yml, xyz.yml, whatever you want to call it. But this .github/workflows is something that we have to follow, okay, for doing GitHub actions. Okay. And I hope now what workflow is clear, right, for everyone, like we discussed in the lecture. Basically a system in place, right? Like what should be the flow of actions? Like we saw various flows, right? I mean, like these and stuff, right? Okay. So yeah, that's what workflow will be creating, right? Now open this build.yml file. YML stands for, and there are like two definitions. Any uh, thing which is written using YAML is called as YML. YAML is like yet another markup language, right? Basically a name for this particular language. Then I think there's a one more definition called as and markup language. Like it's not a markup language as such. Okay, it doesn't matter. It's just a language for us to write. So we'll see. There's no uh, coding language as such. Just a kind of how we have this markdown file, right? So not exactly a markdown, but something similar to that. Okay. One thing we have to remember in this YML file is we have to follow indentation, right? How many of you know what indentation means? Maybe I'm not pronouncing it right. Indentation, right? So yeah, I mean the spaces, right? Indentation is spaces, right? The tab, how much you want to indent something, right? Now this thing, let's say for loop, I have some thing, right? Now what right here, I'm giving some space, right? Indentation. In JavaScript, indentation doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if I write if and everything here itself, right? But any examples of any programming languages where this matters, indentation matters? Yeah, Python, right? Exactly. So for those who don't know, in a Python, we have to write in a way. If I write if I know the condition and something inside that, it should be thoda indented from if. Okay. Similarly, in YML, whatever we write, the indentation does matter. Okay, and we have to follow it. Okay, now this file is where we will define that particular workflow, right? Basically the action, okay, when to happen and what to happen. Okay, now very simple, when to happen, basically on, right? On. And we can write again, like we said, there are various options. We will start with a very basic one, and we'll see 2 3 exercises. On push. Okay, on push, don't type. I mean, I will give you time to code. Okay, just pay attention. On push, I hope this line is clear, right? Like we are saying, whenever something is pushed to the repo, on push. Okay, now what to do, like when this push, right? We can have jobs. It's called as jobs. Okay, and now we can have various jobs, like it's all right. We can have testing, various things. We will see what to do. Okay, now in the job, yeah, these things are keyword, right? What are we writing on push? Obviously we have a push in GitHub, and all the stuff. Jobs is again here. Okay, here in the jobs again we have to indent. Okay, now here I can give a name for these jobs. Okay, let's call it first job. Now, as this kind of gets this way, you will have these things in mind. Okay, should I remember this? No, like we discussed, this is something set up by the organization level. It is just for us to know how this works. Also, if required, you will go and visit GitHub Actions, right? And once you go to GitHub Actions, you will see various examples. Okay, if you go to, I think there are some examples. If I go and type examples, okay, you will see various examples as such, so you'll be able to find it out. Okay, don't worry. Now we have on push jobs, first job, you can put anything. Now here, right, in our first job we can define multiple things. Now one thing that we want to define, again, remember, whatever action we are writing, it runs on the GitHub. It's a GitHub action, right? It runs on the GitHub. So we want to specify which operating system this job should run on. Okay, so runs on. Okay, runs on, and give whatever, when you are coding, I will let you know, right? I will give it as Mac OS latest. If you're on Windows, you can give Ubuntu latest, sorry, Windows latest. If you are on Linux or Ubuntu, you can give Ubuntu hyphen latest. Okay, Now, again, remember, we are in the first job itself. With the indentation, you can see that we have jobs in that first job. Where should this job run on? Runs on this particular operating system. Now we have the steps, as simple as that. Okay. Now we have the steps. Now in the steps, we are saying that first step is run this thing. Okay, run something, run something. Then we can have again run something, but let's have a very basic one first. Okay. Let us say that whenever something is pushed, the first job it should do is print the node version in that machine. Node version, right? How do we check node version? I think node -v, right? Or hyphen version. Okay, node version. Now I will explain again, then you can type it, right? We are saying of our first job, right? On push, whenever something is pushed to this GitHub repo, where is our GitHub repo? Yeah, when something is pushed on this GitHub repo, run the first job. In the first job, which operating system should it run on? Mac OS latest. Or you can give the version and various things, right? Now remember, this is a virtual system kind of gets created by the GitHub Actions on GitHub to run it. It's not it doesn't run on our local computer as such. Okay. Then we are saying steps. We're just saying, okay, run this thing, run this node version, and basically it will print the node version, right? I mean, if I type here node version, okay, it says 14. Do you think it should print 14 here from whatever you have understood so far on the GitHub? Do you think it should print 14 on the GitHub? No, it will print the node version which is there in that virtual computer or virtual environment which GitHub is using, which has Mac OS operating system. Okay, is that clear? The last point which I mentioned. Okay, this action, GitHub action, something which happens on the GitHub. Okay, not on our local computer. Because remember, on organization level, you can't, I mean, if you could do in each computer, then why do we even need the system in place? It's something to happen on the GitHub action. Okay, so now quickly write this. There are very 6 lines of code. I mean, 6 lines of steps. Just quickly write that. On push jobs, first job runs on. Here you can give, if you're on Windows, give it as Windows latest. Don't give Mac OS latest, give Windows latest. Again, this should not matter. This should not matter because if we are running a file on a local system and if you want it to run on the same OS, we should give that. Anyway, it will be an virtual environment. Okay. In the steps, we'll give our first step, run and node version. Everyone ready? Done with this? Okay. Yeah. Now make sure that you come out of the workflow and the folder, right? You come out of the GitHub and the workflow folder, and you are in the parent folder. Parent folder basically is the folder in which you have your .github folder. Okay. Or basically where you initialize the Git, right? Git init and Git remote add origin and stuff. Okay. Now let's check our Git status. There are these files which are there. I don't want to add this lecture text, previous lectures, and so I will just ignore that. Okay. Let's add, commit, and push this GitHub folder. Okay. So git add .github folder. Okay. You have to kind of sometimes explicitly add this because whenever we initialize git also comes and the git command tends to ignore that. So type git add .github and /. Okay. And if you check using git status, you should be able to see that this file, which was a YML file, was kind of added. Okay. Just basically git add and then git status to check that. Okay. Now, what's the next step after adding? If you want to, push something to a repo, what's the first thing? Yeah, remember that, right? ACP, add, commit, push. So commit, I can write git commit -m, first job, first workflow, right? Whatever you want to call it, first job, commit that, right? Commit that. Don't push yet. Okay? Just commit with a message. Okay. Now, okay, I think we can, if you're done committing, do push as well. Git push origin master. Remember, when you're doing git push, we are triggering that on push, do these things, right? So we will see that. Do git push origin master. Okay. And then come to your repo and refresh it. You will be able to see this thing, right? Or look at my screen until it happens on your computer, right? So that you don't miss on these things. Now you can see that we have this folder pushed on our GitHub. And remember, we had triggered an action on push. So you can see these actions, right? Let's go to actions and we can see our first job. Okay. So let's click here. It says failure. So let's see why it failed. Okay. So let me go to the push this. We have a status, which is a summary. Now let's see why it failed. And we have a event, we have push. It because node wasn't installed. No, not that shouldn't be an issue. Let me just refresh this. Okay. We will also discuss what happens when it fails in a various things. Did I push to the master branch? Yes, I will push to the master branch. What are you seeing in the actions? It says invalid steps value. Steps should be list of users or run items. Steps should be, okay, probably we made some syntax issue. Let us just check. Steps should value should be list of users or run items. Okay. Let's just check the steps for that thing. Steps, invalid steps value. Steps should be list of users or run. GitHub actions. Yes, probably some small issue there. Okay. We did first job, that's fine. Then, okay, runs on. We gave the macOS latest. I mean, I gave that. In the steps, I did node version. That's fine. Let's look at that. There should be only one. There should be that we have too many where you're defining. No, I don't have too many. Let's see what the issue is. Yeah, check the indentation, right? Let's check our indentation. Your name, users, and with setting should be in a part of the same object. Uh, no, that's fine because I am indenting. Just give me a minute. Let me just modify this and check. Git status, git add dot github workflows and build.yml. Git commit, write modifying indentation. Git push origin master. Don't write. I'm just experimenting to see if that fixes. So let me go to my repo. Triggered, we have push now. Yeah, we did push again. It's a failure. Okay. Yeah, invalid steps value. Steps should be a list of users or run items. Okay. Let me have one more, like someone suggested. I think Rohit suggested run. Let me have it as, let's say, let it print maybe node version, right? Node version was fine. Let's say npm version, or what else we can print. Okay, let's try this. Don't try it. I'm just experimenting again. Dot GitHub workflows build git commit -m add one more run git push origin master. Okay. Invalid steps should be list of users or runs. Okay, 1 second. Let me just go to GitHub Actions and check an example, right? Examples, step. That's fine. That's like various ons, right? Now steps, users. Okay, do we need to check out 2v3? But I think that should be fine without reading the code, because we are just saying that run this. I don't have any other file. Hmm, hmm, hmm. Should it be hyphen space run? No, that should not be an issue. Okay, just give me a moment, right? Yes, it's written fail on line 1. Now, let me just repeat the steps. Add, commit, push. Let me go. Okay, it is queued. Let's see if this works. Probably I just give space before run. I mean the hyphen and the run. Let's check for this. Okay, yes, perfect. So the mistake that we were doing was this, give a space after this hyphen. Okay, it's hyphen space run, and it should work. Okay, do that and do add commit push, and then we can go to the GitHub Actions and check. Okay, and everyone able to see the actions now, the past action. Yeah, the issue was we have to give a hyphen, the space run. It's not like hyphen run. Again, very small things, but yeah, they do break the syntax as such. Everyone able to get running action once you made the modifications, added, committed, pushed? Everyone? I just see 2-3 responses. Queued? Okay, no issues. It will take some time, but once you go and check, we will see that, okay, this is a thing. And we have something called a summary, right? In the summary, we see that, okay, it's a success, total duration 23 seconds and stuff. Okay. Now, if we go here, right, if we go here, we will see the flow, right? The whole flow. The first thing was it set up a job. That's something which GitHub does. It has each runner for each run. And right, we can see one operating system was installed, which was Mac OS in my case. We can see, Mac OS with this version was installed and all that stuff. Basically, setting up that job. Okay. Then we gave two things, right? We gave two things to run. One was node version, one was npm version. Now let's see what is a node version in that computer which GitHub kind of virtually created a virtual environment, Mac OS wala. The node version is 16.9.0. But on my computer, if I go and check my node version, right, I see 14.18.2. So is that clear? What node version is this? This is not our local what's called local computer node version. Is this point clear, everyone? Okay, where this is running, where this from which machine this version got printed? It's from the virtual machine, right, or the virtual computer which kind of GitHub is using to run our actions. Okay, then we did npm version, so it gave some 8.9 and 8.3. So these two things is what we gave to run. This thing was basically setting up the job and then completing the job as such. Okay. So that's what we did. We just finished a first GitHub action. Is that clear? How we can run a GitHub action, a first GitHub action, right? Now, whatever we write, that's what it kind of runs here, right? Here you can write deployment, test, and various things. Okay. So we will see with more examples. Okay. We didn't have any files here so far. Okay. So we just saw with nothing was read from our repository, right? This was just from a push. Nothing got read from our repository because we don't have any code in our repository. Okay. Now let's try to have a code. Okay. Do npm init -y to have a package of this one folder. And let's have maybe an index.js file, right? Touch index.js file. Let's go to index.js file and then maybe write something, right? So let's write maybe console.log hello from index.js file. Okay. Everyone done creating a package of this one file using npm init -y and creating an index.js file where we write hello from index.js. Once done, just let me know so that we can proceed forward. Okay, you can write anything in the console log as simple as A or B, anything. Okay, yeah. Now, so far, the steps that we wrote, right? They didn't had to read anything from our repository. I mean, like except the GitHub workflows, which is by default we have to write for GitHub Actions. There was no code which it had to read. Okay. Now to be able to read from our repo, we have to check out. Okay. There is one more GitHub Actions thing called as checkout. GitHub Actions, or we can just go to GitHub Actions and see that. So if you go to GitHub Actions, let's say get started with actions. We have checkout. Let me come back. Let me see where I saw GitHub Actions checkout. Okay, so when we want it to check out to our repo, right? Basically, to read anything from the repo, it has to check out to our repo. We use something called as a checkout. Now, this what is the checkout? Is it a git command? No, it is something from the actions itself. Remember, we discussed GitHub Actions is a one thing given by GitHub. In that GitHub Actions, there are various things. One thing is checkout. Okay, so we will write that. Okay, use that, right? Uses and we say actions. Remember, checkout is from actions / checkout. And I think it's version 3, the latest one. So if you go here in the actions, we can see here there are various things. In that, one thing was checkout. Okay, we can read here. The action checks out your repository, I mean, whichever you're using. So your workflow can access it. If you want our workflow to access our repo, we have to give that. Okay, users actions / checkout at v3. V3 is the latest version of that. Everyone done writing this? Again, be mindful of the space between the hyphen and the users. We are just saying that, okay, use this checkout thing, because why we use that? To check the action checks out your repository, so your workflow can access it. And syntax is this action / checkout at v3. Okay, now that it can access, now what we will say is, we will say maybe run again, right? Run. Now this time, what do we want to run? We want to run our file, right? Our index.js file that we created. So what do you think will be the syntax here? How do you run a file? Like when you want to run a file in a computer? Yeah, node index.js, right? As simple as that. Node and index.js. As simple as that. And when will this all happen? We have 4 steps now. Print the node version, print the npm version, check out to our repo, and run this. So whenever we push, okay, push is the trigger. So now let's me do git status. Now let's add this file as well, right? Git add index.js, git add this GitHub workflows build. I'm doing this like manually one by one because I don't want to add commit push that lecture.txt and those stuff. Okay, but you can see whatever was added, you can just do it. Git add dot you can do. Okay. Now git status, I see those two things got added. I mean, like index.js is a new file and the YML file was modified. Okay. Now let me commit. Added a file and workflow involving file. And after adding committing, git push origin master. Okay. Now, once we go to our GitHub action, and first let's refresh the repo. We will see our code index.js file. Now let's go to the actions. Now we see it is queued, right? Let's open that. Okay. Okay, we gave this name as also first job. That's fine. If I go here, we can see that all things, all the jobs were run. First thing was it printed a node version. It printed the npm version. Then it checked out to our repository, right? And now then it run our node index.js and we see that hello from index.js file. Did everyone get that? For those who got, did anyone else got failed other than Priyanshu? I mean, if someone got failed, just go to workflow file and check what it is saying. Resolved. Okay, maybe some small issue, right? Some maybe something with the syntax. It's still running. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. You can just go to actions and see the topmost action. And we see here that we see all things running. Now, is that clear how we can improvise on that? I mean, like, there can be much complex. If you can see the syntax here, for example, you can see how, kind of this big it is. But we are just seeing the, very baby steps so that we don't feel overwhelmed and we can also start it. Okay. So everyone got what it read from the file and printed. Gaur says failure. So Gaur, check your syntax or read the error. What does the error say? What does the error say? Read that. I mean, like we discussed, right? It's not JavaScript. So every single space, every indentation does matter. See if you have used action instead of actions or some mistake with the checkout at v3, anything. Like for Priyanshu, it was checkout v was added wrong. So he corrected and then it worked for him. Okay, if everyone got what was like what was there in the file, I mean, like those who have got, just type 1. Gaur, was it resolved? Just check once, just cross check with my screen once. See if you're doing any mistake. Make sure your index.js file is at the root folder, obviously. It should not be inside your GitHub folder or workflows folder. Okay, so now we had this workflow where we had multiple things to run. Like, I mean, this may be very basic things, but here you can run complex things, right? Let's say we had a test file, right? We had a test file. You have not learned test. Have you guys learned testing? Maybe in advanced JS or somewhere, jest or somewhere. Someone saying yes, someone saying no, nope. I mean, I'm assuming every one of you are from the same course, right? I mean, like, okay, intro class, right? So now you will have some idea, right, about the testing. So here I can write here as run and npm run test, right? Or whatever the syntax is. Are you getting the idea? Like what all we can run here? We are running a basic thing, index.js, and just printing hello. But you can see that we can run whatever we want. Okay, so we'll see one more, 2-3 examples, two more examples, so that you get some idea. Okay, now we're done with that. Now let's go to our index.js file, right? Let's use some package so that we can see if GitHub Actions can also install that package and run. Any quick, suggestions for a package to use? It should be a very lightweight package. No, a very lightweight package. Yeah, generate random number or a cow, say anything would do. So let's generate a random number. So npm generate random number. I can use my.random, but this is to check an external package. Okay. So pay attention because there's a reason why we're using an external package, because we have to add something in the run flow, right? We can't just say that, run something without giving the package to GitHub. Okay. So let me install this npm install random number, though we can do it my.random, but the point is to use an external package. Okay. So everyone do install it, npm I random hyphen number without spaces. Okay, let me just check in the package.json if that file is present. I mean, like whatever we install now. Yeah, we do have independencies, random number of some 0.0.09, some version. Okay, now how do I use it? Okay, it says just importing and running it. So importing and just running it, and it should give a number. Okay, I'm giving just rn and it's trying to. Okay, I'm assuming everyone installed it, imported it. You can just do, give a variable name, require common JS of importing, and just run that particular thing. Let me just cross check if it is working by running this file, node index.js. Okay. Yeah, we are getting hello from index.js file, but we are not printing. Right? Be printing it. We are not printing it. So let me try to console it. Console.log. Yeah, we have to console it. Once I console, I'm able to get some random number. Okay. Everyone done consoling it, and just run the file so that you are sure okay यहाँ पे at least काम कर रहा है आपके computer में. Okay, cool. Now let's go to build.yml file, right? Now just look at this file and make some guesses or assumptions. If I run this add commit and push my index.js file, will this run work? Node index.js. Will this run work? Node index.js. If not, why not? Yeah, because we are using a package, right? We are using a package, but GitHub Action doesn't know if we are using this package, right? I mean, it doesn't know. So, uh, okay. Should we be pushing the node modules to GitHub so that GitHub knows what package we're using? No, right? Then what's the way? What's the way? Like when we want to know someone else, maybe a developer, someone, what all packages we have used, how do we tell them? Okay, yeah, it's in the package.json, right? Package.json. Now let's say someone is having this package.json. How will they install all the libraries which are mentioned in the package.json? npm, right? Npm install. Exactly. So we will tell them, we'll tell GitHub, okay, see, once you checked out to our repo, right? Before running node index.js, just run one more thing. What should GitHub action run? What should the runner run? Yeah, npm install, as simple, or npmi, as simple as that. Okay. So far, is it clear for everyone why we added npm install, or how you can or what you need to do when you have a package, right? We have to tell GitHub, okay, if you're before running this, just run this npm install, so that now he has the access to our GitHub repo by checking out. In our package.json, we have mentioned and the dependency is there. So it will be installed and then can run the file. Okay. Now we also got node modules. So should we be pushing node modules? No, the answer is no. So how will we not push node modules? By having a git ignore file, right? So let me just have a git ignore file. Now in the git ignore file, let me write node modules. I think that's enough for you, but let me write this lecture.txt and previous lectures.txt and xyz.txt as well. Okay, perfect. I'm assuming everyone added in git ignore. Now let me just check git status. We see that only these two things are modified, and like these things are not added, like package.json, package log and stuff. So we can just do git add and dot git status. Now I have everything which is required. Node module is not there, which is good because it was ignored by git ignore. Let me commit it. Git commit -m. Added an external package to a file. Now let's just push it. Git push origin master. I mean, now you know the drill, right? Like what needs to be done. Once it is pushed, let's go to our GitHub action. Someone is messaging me at this time. Why, bro? Okay. Yeah, let's go back to my GitHub. Okay, where is like these things break the flow. Let me go back to my actions. Now if I go to actions, we see that it's still queued, it's running, but hopefully should be able to run that file and generate a random number. It's still running because remember, this is like comparatively later than the previous one, because here in the small virtual computer, which GitHub Action is creating for us, GitHub has to install that library, right? Generate random number. So obviously it takes a bit more time than the previous jobs or workflows because it has to install a package and run that package. Let me see till which state it is done. It is still there. Okay. Mine is like, okay. चेकआउट हो गया अभी आई थिंक ओके इंस्टॉल भी कर रहा है now we can see all our jobs. Node version to print hua. Npm version also got printed. It checked out to our repo. It ran npm install, right? It added the package. Now if I go to run node index.js, we got hello from index.js file, and then we also got a random number. Okay, so is the third example clear of how we can use a package? I mean, the first example was without even checking out to our repo, right? Till this particular job, just printing the version or something without checking out to our particular repo. The second example was checking out to a repo and reading a file and printing, I mean, like whatever the file does. The third example was in the file, but using an external package. So we have to tell GitHub Actions to install before it runs our file. So by these examples, is GitHub Actions making sense? What we are doing here, or why GitHub Actions will be used, right? Not to print like this, right? I mean, not to print like this, but this is an example how we can run some things. For example, now you have some idea about testing. You can have something like this, like run node, maybe test. I don't know the exact syntax. I think it was npm test test.js. Whatever you have, you can do it. Let's say you had a deployment wala thing. You can have run npx deploy some URL, the file name, and various stuff. So whatever the scripts that you can write, right, which you can write in the like package.json scripts, you can write here whatever you want to basically run, install, whatever you do it. So is everyone getting the idea of what we are doing here? Not just what examples we saw, but what the potential of this, what could be done here, why GitHub Action is used. Okay, cool. So we will take a small 3 minutes break and then discuss one more example. Okay, so be back by, okay, I don't want to test the YML file. I don't want to debug again. Okay, let's come back by 10:26 p.m. and then see one more example. Okay, I think we can resume recording. Okay, recording was not stopped at all. Okay, that's fine. So every single time when a code is integrating in a collaborative project, GitHub Action can automatically do testing, building, and deploying for us. It automates various processes. XS. So if you have the GitHub workflow and the build the YML file which runs, and that's what it does, right? We are telling the steps, what steps to do, and it does those steps. As simple as that. Okay. Any doubts, anyone so far? Like now we will discuss a bit complex example. So before that, with the flow, any doubt, anyone? Okay, perfect. Now, we discussed that like the typical flow will be to build, test, deploy, and stuff, right? Now, showing deployment would have been a very nice example. But what happens is in the Heroku, right? In the Heroku, before cyclic, did you guys use Heroku? Did anyone use Heroku before cyclic? or even like Vercel, Netlify, right? So you get this command, right, to run that, like npx Heroku something, like some command uh, to Heroku CLI. You have the Heroku CLI and have that command, right? Now that command could be also added here. Like after testing, the command to deploy, right? But now Heroku doesn't give a free access for us to deploy, and Cyclic has CI/CD automatically. Like Cyclic has GitHub Actions automatically, so I can't really show deployment. Now what I can do is I will take one other example. I think in the starting of the class we discussed this, right? That the coding style will apart. Coding style will apart. If someone is submitting code in the coding style which is not what we have said, like maybe test that. So we will see that. Okay, we will see that example. Has everyone used linter or familiar with what linter is? Linter, ESLint. No, not render, not render, not render. Render is basically the deployment platform. Okay, so okay, this is not anyway related to GitHub Actions for now. It's a library we'll be using. So I'll just give you a brief what linter is. Maybe you will have it in the 301 curriculum along with the Newland testing as such. Okay, linter is basically kind of libraries that we can use to kind of define our code style, right? So let's say I have a messy code style. Okay, we define. Okay, let me show an example, right? Let's say we have a linter where we define that uh, between every bracket, right, there should be a line, empty line. Okay, empty line. So let's say it should be like this. Let maybe count plus plus. Let's say we had some imaginary bracket code, right? We define that after every opening bracket and before closing bracket, there should be empty line. So even if a coder codes like this, and if linter is defined, there are some packages for that. Once the coder saves or the programmer saves the code, and the linter will automatically change it to that space wala part. Okay, is what linter does making sense? We are defining some styles. It's a library. Okay, we can also check that. So there are libraries which are for linter. I think yeah, there are you can see basically formatting, right? Basically a format, exactly, in simple words, like a formatting. Okay, so we will use one formatting library, okay, which is ESLint, because that's one complex or like a real life example that I can show, because printing something from index.js file is not something we'll be doing with GitHub Actions, right? We'll do something like testing or deploying those stuff. So we'll let's do testing part. Let's test the format. Okay, before that, now forget GitHub Actions for now. Now pay attention to ESLint. Okay, it's one of the library to lint that. Okay, it's a very famous one. So we can see that find and fix problems in your JavaScript code. There are various examples. For now, forget GitHub Actions, right? I mean, does ESLint has anything to do with GitHub Actions? No, don't get confused, right? And I don't think what GitHub Actions are, sir, that is using ESLint or something. Okay, this is a library, a package, just like how we did random number generation. We are seeing one package for formatting our code as such. Okay, so let me install. No, this is like to create that file, right? So let me go to ESLint npm. Okay, so yeah, we can see ESLint is a tool for identifying and reporting on patterns found in JavaScript code. In many ways, it is similar to JSLint and JSLint. There are many packages, right? If you go to linter packages for JavaScript code, you will find that. So do explore, linting tools or linting packages. You can see, okay, there's a collection itself on GitHub with all the possible linters, standard, ESLint, JSLint, CoffeeLint. Even for CSS, you have CSS comb and various things. Okay, I hope what linter makes sense. You don't have to know this for now, but it's a good thing to explore in your construct week project. I can add this as a construct week problem statement. Okay. Now let's go and install. This will install as a dependency. So are you guys familiar with, I think we discussed this in the node intro class, the difference between a dependency and developer dependency? Difference between dependency and a developer dependency? Dependency and developer dependency. So what is the difference? So if you go in package.json, right, I see dependencies, I have this random number, right? Now I can also install something as developer dependency, right? Okay, let's not waste more time. It's already 10:30. So dependency is something, a package that is required, right? That without which your code would fail or not run, right? Developer dependency is the dependency which is required while development, right? Which are required while development or required by developer. Okay, so let's say we had a library like chalk, for example, which highlights brackets, right, in our code, which highlights brackets. Let's say this is a reticular bracket, this that. Is that a dependency or dev dependency for our project? A package which kind of highlights this, is it a dependency? Is it a dependency or dev dependency? Yeah, it is a dev dependency because without that our code will run, but it's a kind of helpful for a developer, right? So similarly, ESLint is a developer dependency. So let us install that as, do you guys know the syntax to install a developer dependency? npm I ESLint is in the package name is for normal installation, dependency installation. It will install in the dependencies. If you want it as a developer dependency, you have to use this save as a developer. I hope I am correct with the brackets. So dot save hyphen dev. Yeah, it allows you to save packages under the dev dependencies object in your package.json file. Okay, so let me run that. Forget GitHub Actions for now. We are just discussing linting. Why we are discussing now? So that I can show one usable example with GitHub Actions. If Heroku was providing us free deployment, even now we could have explored deployment also, but Cyclic doesn't give does that automatically. Okay, now if I go here in dev dependencies, we see ESLint is installed, which is fine. Now let's close this. Okay, now whenever you want to use these linter packages, right, you have to define your own rules like we discussed. One rule was, I mean, if you want an empty line to be created after every opening of the bracket and before closing of the bracket and stuff. We have to configure that again, has a very big learning curve for linting itself based on what your organization wants to configure. So what we'll do is we'll go to linter and it kind of automatically configures few things like this. Just like how we have npm init -y, right, to generate a package.json file. So we can copy this. It kind of generates a default kind of like a empty configuration for us for our linting thing. Okay, so let's go and do this. I'm copying from the eslint.org. I'm sorry, .org. Let me paste it here as well. And this is after installing ESLint. Okay, and do it in the parent folder. I mean, like day 16 for my case, it will generate one file for that linter. I think it's some, no. Okay. Everyone, okay, before that, everyone install ESLint as a developer dependency or even as a normal dependency. Okay. Once you have installed ESLint, type this npm init eslint config and pay attention to here. Okay, pay attention because I want everyone to be in sync, because if you make any mistakes, we don't have time to debug as such. Okay, everyone till this point where I am. If you are at the point where I am, just type 1. That way I know, okay, how many of you are here, and then I can continue from there. Okay, that's almost like half of the class. 8, 9, 10. What about the rest 8 or rest 7? Okay, cool. So now when we do npm init ESLint configure, basically we're asking ESLint to configure for us. It's very asking us, how would you like to use ESLint? To check syntax fully, to check syntax and find problems, to check syntax, find problems, and enforce code style, right? So let's select the last one. To check syntax, find problems, and enforce code style. You can toggle that by pressing above and the low arrow key. Select the last one and hit enter. Done, everyone? Selecting why we will use ESLint. My bad, did I select style? Let me just do it again. Yeah, to check syntax, find problems, and enforce code style, I hit enter. Now it asks what type of module does your project use? Obviously, it's a common JS. So select common JS, hit enter. Then it asks which framework does your project use? React, Vue, none of this. It's none of this. Okay. Does your project use TypeScript? No. Where does your code run? Browser or Node? It's Node. Okay. I'm assuming everyone is done there, and we are at this point. How would you like to define a style for your project? Okay. Now we don't want to define our own style because again, it gets complex with why we're doing. We can use an already some style guides which are used by some organizations and they have open sourced. Okay. So we can select use a popular style guide. Okay. And then you will see options for some popular style guides. One is by Airbnb, one is a standard one is a Google one is EXO and stuff. Let's select the standard one. Okay. Select the standard style guide. Then we have what format do you want your config file to be in? JavaScript. Okay. That's the last question. Then we say, okay, would you like to install, like it again has some dependencies. So would you like to install them? Give yes. Which package manager do you want to use? NPM. Everyone done? Is the installation done? Okay. Yeah. Now, again, we are not, we have, this is what we did till now. It has nothing to do with GitHub Actions. It's just a linter thing that you can learn in the content week or somewhere and use that as well. Okay. Now let's try to run linter for our index.js file. Okay. So let me see the syntax to run that. npm init ESLint config. Yeah, that's we have done to define a default configuration. Just give me a moment. Filling issues, config, installation and usage. We had something called as in okay. You can use on any file. Just give me a moment. I'm just checking. How do I run that test? I think it was just executed package on the file you want to run. Okay, let me just try it. Npx to execute. Don't try it. I'm just checking. ESLint is ESLint with some hyphens. No, ESLint is ESLint. So npx ESLint and which file I want to check. Let me just give it as dot, all the files. Yeah, perfect. So everyone just run this npx ESLint and npx space ESLint space dot. Or you can give index.js for the file name. Everyone done? and saw these errors and the warnings. npx space ESLint space dot. Okay, now let's read this. It says strings must use single quote. Unexpected var use let or const instead. Extra semicolon. Too many blank lines at the end of the file. Max of 0 allowed. So all these things, right? These expectations. Who said this? Did we set this? Or any? I mean, actual guesses of who set these styles or the way of coding that okay, only this should be followed. ESLint itself, but for ESLint, did we give okay, ये follow करना है? No. Remember, we had these options, right, to select the style guide, Google ka standard, various things. The one we selected was a standard one. Okay, in the standard one, these things are there. Yeah, you know, these are the things which are happening. So do try to fix them as such. Okay, is that clear? What linter does? Okay, again, we are for time constraint and everything, we're using a ready-made style guide for your organization. You can have your own style guide, you can define your own style and enforce and that stuff. You can explore that ESLint in depth for that. Okay, you'll watch some, you will have some videos also on how to use ES. Again, a very famous one. You can see how many weekly download it has, right? Around 290 lakhs, like 29.1 million. So okay, now if I fix this, let me remove this. Okay, let me give it as it is. Now, if I fix this one line, right, instead of double quotes, if I have single quotes, that's the first error which says. Second thing says unexpected var use letter const. Okay, let me use const here. I fix that. Extra semicolon, let me remove that. Extra spaces, let me remove all things. Now, if I run the file again, npx ESLint and dot or index.js, it says new line required at end of file but not found. Okay, it requires us to have one new line at the end. Okay, now let me run again and we see nothing. Okay, that means all the like conventions or which was what was expected from the style guide, we have fulfilled that. Is that clear so far, everyone, with the linter? With the linter? Okay, now let's add this linter thing, right, to our GitHub action flow. So what we'll say is in our GitHub action flow, let's go to our build.yml, right? After running node index.js, do this, run npx ESLint dot. Do I again have to give npm install before writing this? Line number 11, maybe here after node index.js, do I have to give npm install? Why not? I'm using a new package, right? Why not? Yeah, because remember in line number 9, we already gave npm install. Okay. We did one more mistake. We have installed ESLint dot in a developer dependency, right? So not sure if npm install installs for that. So what we can do is instead of npm install, I think we also have npm CI for continuous integration. Let me just check. Yeah. Clean install is meant to be used in automated environments. The project must have an okay. npm installed, npm CI. Just test platforms, continuous integration. Okay, let's use instead of npm install, let's have npm CI. Okay, and let's just have it again. CI is similar to npm install, just that CI means clean install. It removes something extra things like package log.json, some versions. Again, you can find a difference online, but let's try npm CI, else we'll come back to npm install. Okay, now are we ready to push this code? We have node version, npm version, check out to our repo, install these things, clean install, run index.js, and then run ESLint. Okay. Now we fixed all the errors in our file, right? When all the errors are in, all the expectations of style guide. So do you think anything will get printed in the GitHub actions when we are at line number 11 at this particular job? Okay, and we are calling it first job. Let's call it as last job for now. Okay, we can also change the name, make it last job or something, right? Now let's just quickly add it. Git status, git add dot, git status, have everything, git commit -m, add it linter, git push origin master. Okay. This may, I mean, sound boring. Why are we doing this? But pay attention. We do have one more learning which happens in our case here. Okay. Now I have added committed pushed. Let me go to my repo. Yeah. Let me go to my actions. Now we see that we had this added hidden actions. Yeah, we have this added linter. Let me, it's still queued, obviously. Let me open it. Last job is a name that we have given. Okay. Now, once we go, we see all the steps it has run. We don't have to check each one of them because we know what it does, right? Let's just check index.js. We see hello from index.js file and the random number which was generated. In run npx ESLint, we don't see any output from here, right? Is that as expected? Is that as expected? No, then what is the expectation? We don't have any error, right? Like we resolved all the errors, and when we run on locally also npx ESLint dot, we don't get anything now because we resolved all the style guides expectations. So it makes sense. It makes sense. Now let's do a small mistake. It says strings should be in double quotes, right? Let's add double quotes. Okay, it's again a perfect JavaScript syntax, but it violates our style guide. Okay, now let me just do git status, git add index.js, git commit -m, added double quotes, index.js. Okay, git push origin master. Okay, now let's go. Now, what do you think? Now, what do you think will happen in our GitHub actions when it is queued? Once this runs, what happens? Yeah, we will get that required output, right? Where it fails, that particular test will fail because remember we will get an error from the ESLint. So let's wait for it. Let's see there. We can go here. We can open last job. Everyone pay attention, even if it's not running on a computer or something. Do look at the screen and pay attention, right? Now, okay, let me close whatever is being run. I know we are out of, okay, we are almost there, but this one important learning which happens here, right? Now let's see here. We have post, run actions, and complete job, right? Pay attention to my screen. In run node index.js, we got whatever was in the file. Then here it failed. Why it failed? Because there is an error which says strings must use single quotes. Now this is perfectly valid, right? Like this is what we expected because in our style guide says that we should not have double quotes, but we are having double quotes. So this is something expected, right, to be in GitHub actions. Everyone, what do you think? This is something that it's expected, right? Or like this is this strange? No, this is expected because that's why we have added linter. Okay, check for the linter. If something is there, like, if something is failing, it will run. If we get the error, it will stop there. Okay. Now pay attention to one important fact. Now let's say we had here as run, maybe some command to deploy, right? npx deploy Heroku CLI, some random stuff, right? Now we have like from line number 6 to line number 12, we have different runs, right? Different steps. In which step will our GitHub action fail? In which line number wala step will our GitHub action fail? 11, right? Line number 11, because remember, we are doing ESLint and we are not following the particular syntax. So example, like we saw, we get an error, right? Now, in that case, do you think this next step should run or get deployed? Should it get deployed? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like it should not, right? I mean, like if you think logically, agar kuch fail ho raha hai, I mean, if testing is failing, it should not get deployed, right? That's exactly what happens in continuous integration and in continuous deployment. Exactly what happens. So we have different stages, right? Build, test, deploy, monitor. If something goes wrong in testing, it won't get deployed. No one has to come and manually check the testing logs and stop deployment. It automatically doesn't run the next job. Let's try to stimulate that. Okay. Let me put ESLint above this. Okay, above this. Now, if we run this, I mean, if I push to the GitHub and if I in our actions, do you think this hello from index.js file will get printed? Here it got printed, right? Let's come back here. Here, if I go to here, we can see here, hello from index.js file got printed and we got the random number, right? Now will it get printed? Okay. If not, why not? Because in line number 10, our one job is failing. I mean, we have different steps or runs. One is failing. It should not run. So let's check that. Okay. We're just trying to simulate instead of deployment. Let's check that. Let me add here. Git add git commit, change the order of the pipeline or order of the steps, git push origin master. Okay, now let's come back to my actions. It's queued, basically it's running last job, waiting for a runner to pick up this job. So I mean, like, so the number of steps we have, each one is taken by a runner, so it's called as a runner. As a name, I mean, nothing complex there, right? So let's wait for it to run. वर्जन तो print कर दिया. I didn't get that style option while I was doing in command line. You have to make some mistake. If there is no mistake, ESLint will not throw anything. Like it won't throw an error. Our cell is expecting one quote, so I'm giving double quote. Oh, you mean I didn't get that style option while I was doing in command line? Like while installing ESLint, you didn't get any steps or only the style option? I think everyone else has got, so maybe you skip to something. You can try later after the class. Okay, but like the idea is to not to learn linting. I mean, today's class is not about linter, but to kind of know one useful way of stimulating GitHub actions. Okay, yeah. Now let's come back. Now you can see here, everyone. We had node version run. It got printed. It checked out to our branch. It installed the things required, right? npx elint, ESLint, sorry, not elint. It failed because why? Strings must use single quotes, but I was using double quotes. Now the next run is our node index.js. It is not running that. Is that clear now? How this is being helpful, right? When something fails in the pipeline, some process fails, it doesn't go to the next step. Now here, instead of it being node index.js, it could have been maybe deployment, right? Here, instead of npx ESLint, it could have been npx test. So if something went wrong, if some error came while testing, it doesn't get deployed. No steps after that will get run. It breaks there. Is that clear for everyone? The use case of GitHub Actions, how powerful it is. And see, if this was not there, we would have to manually check, right? Manually run each time. Uh, Try to check, okay, how this, if something failed, oh no, it is failing, don't deploy. Instead of saying all that, we are just leaving this. We can have that command here for deployment. Okay, if something failed here, don't deploy it. How we can make it useful in case of cyclic deployment? Yeah, I didn't check. I mean, like, I just opened cyclic. I saw that okay, they're already having that. Whenever we push to GitHub, they kind of try to deploy. So let's see if we can cyclic sh deploy via command line. If you find some command, you can just add that command. Okay. I think there is a way. It's not cyclic CLI. Let's just check. But you can explore. You got the idea, right? Like what's happening here. Like any script, anything that you're running here, what you can run anything, npm install, npm run any file and stuff. I can have one more file also, run one more file. But once it fails at any stage, it kind of stops. That's how the continuous integration, continuous deployment while a pipeline ensures that everything is in place. The build, the testing, the what's called testing before it goes to the deployment thing. That way everything is in a perfect way. Okay. Yeah, instead of doing it manually, it like we discussed in the starting of the lecture, it automates software development workflow. Right, in workflow we can define whatever we want: building, testing, deploying, monitoring, whatever. Also you can you also get mails, right? Just like how you get when you try to not in this, it's in GitHub is in the other mail, but you will get the mails. Okay, what happened with that GitHub action as such. Okay, is that clear, everyone? Is GitHub actions clear? It may be a very complex topic. I mean, it can become as complex as it can, but we learn in a very simple way with just a few steps. Okay, how we can do it. Now, obviously, once you know this, you can explore more things if required. You won't be setting this up, but if required, you can know, okay, instead of on push, you can have something for maybe on commit, on pull. You can check what all the permitted options are in GitHub Actions, and you will see that someone saying I received mail on a failure of Git. Yes, that way GitHub Action tries to do it. They do also have quick start, learn GitHub Actions and stuff, but I found it a bit difficult in the start itself. So once you know this, you will be able to get that. Imagine if you had to learn like this with so many things, right? Runs on, this is fine. Users, checkout, setup node, something with node version. Yeah, this is kind of okayish. Okay. You can explore that, but again, you don't have to master this or something. Just know that if you see this file in your organization repository, you know what it does and what all it is running. Okay, perfect. Was today's class helpful? Or like it makes sense? Again, don't confuse with linter. Okay, मुझे linter समझ में नहीं आया, तो the I didn't learn GitHub Actions. It's not like that. Linter is just an example to show okay how, because I couldn't stimulate the deployment wala part here. Okay, sure. Yeah, that's pretty much from my side.